Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and as Beacon Aviation noted in the comments down below, we are going to do a real ops today, aka departing late. So we are going to fly our Lufthansa flight 433 from Chicago over to Frankfurt, which is the flight that you guys have voted for in the community section of our channel. So, Chicago by FS Dream Team. The taxiway layout unfortunately not entirely up to date, but still a very good looking scenery, and since there is just no better scenery available at this time, I think it's kind of fair to say that we can use this. Okay. So with those basics out of the way, welcome back to the iniBuilds Airbus A340-300. And well, if you're wondering why it's nighttime today, then I did put the flight numbers together with the overall, I did put the flight number together with the destination there, and one of the particulars of operating Lufthansa Airbus A340s is that they usually fly the same routes that the 747 flies, but kind of the secondary flights at the borderline times. So we are going to depart Chicago at 10:30 p.m. this evening, and then we are going to land in Frankfurt at like noon local time. And since we are going to use time acceleration for the cruise portion of this flight, I thought it's best if we simply set the original departure time of the real flight in our simulator. So we are going to depart at nighttime, which is really worth it due to some very nice lights in the aircraft. We briefly touched on them at the end of the last live stream, but I definitely want to touch on them again today, and today we're going to have a full look into the night lighting of the Airbus A340. Now, Mega Challenger says in the comments, are you using VATSIM or Sane Tensions? We'll be using VATSIM today. And Flying Dutchman, how's the performance so far? Has it improved from the last live stream? Now I would say it's pretty similar. It's still the same version that I'm using, so it's still the pre-release beta version of the aircraft, which however is marked as 1.0, so I imagine they submitted that one to Marketplace for the release. But I think performance is really good on this one. It's much better than the A350 is, and overall it's, I would say, probably on par with the default A330, which performs really well on my system. So I suppose that's that. And Claudio, unfortunately I can't tell you about any release date because I don't know. I suppose it's the same that it is with any marketplace stuff that you submitted, and then either they're fast, make it within a week or so, or they're a little bit slower. I don't know, maybe they've just maybe they just have those dollar signs in the eyes like you see in all those cartoons and are especially fast, but as a matter of fact, we just don't know when it's going to release at this point. By the way, if you do notice that my voice sounds a little bit strange today, then yep, that is unfortunately true. But cancel that unfortunately part. It is true because I've been to a concert yesterday evening, and you can imagine what that did to my voice. So yeah, you'll have to live with it on this video and also on a couple of the future ones. Alright though, nonetheless, let's go ahead and get right into this. So, we are going to get up into that cockpit. You can see we've got the lights on full right now. Unfortunately, the airport has really strong floodlights in the simulation here, so that's why it looks very good when you look at it over here, but when you look down here, that blue comes from the airport. Not much we can do about it, unfortunately. Yeah, we have to live with this. Okay, so, that's that part. Now, one question down there. Does INI include both the 300 and the 600? Not for the time being. We don't know about their future plans, but for the time being it's the 300. The 600 is getting developed by Aerosoft in collaboration with Tolis at the moment. So, yeah, your call to decide. Now let's go into the electronic flight pack here and start with a little bit of flight preparation. We're going to import our flight plan from SimBrief. Let's go ahead and view that one down here and have a look at what we came up with. So this is going to be a route of flight, which, by the way, is the same route that was used this morning for this very flight. So this is the real-world route over here. Departing from Chicago, we are heading across Canada, across the North Atlantic, Scotland, the North Sea, Dutchland. Yes, I was really thinking about how the Netherlands are called for a second. And then into Germany, into Frankfurt. I do expect a lovely arrival in Frankfurt today with lots of traffic, as it is Sunday evening, and we are flying this on VATSIM. And well, that's our route of flight. We don't need to worry about crossing North Atlantic tracks over here, by the way, because the active real-world tracks at the moment are going eastbound, are a little bit further in the south, and the... Did I say eastbound? Westbound, of course. And the eastbound tracks are currently not active, so crossing those tracks over here, not going to be a problem. Now, significant weather chart, lots of stuff over here, but if we look closely, then we can see that this is low-level stuff, which covers that entire part over here. This is low-level stuff, severe icing below level 220, and those CBs are to the north of us. So generally good weather heading out into the North Atlantic. We're going to cross that jet stream flight level 330 over there, and, well, we'll be cruising in flight level 370 today, so there may be a little turbulence associated with that. The North Atlantic seems pretty fine. That jet stream is so low that I'm not really concerned about it. And then getting on to the second part of the flight over here, we've got, once again, a lot of low-level stuff, a lovely jet stream from behind, and then we're eventually heading into Frankfurt. Now, Frankfurt might be an interesting one today. Let's have a look at the weather. Where is it? Here it is. So, departing Chicago, we got southerly winds, good weather conditions, 24 degrees, and then heading into Frankfurt. At the moment, it's gusty, showers of rain, and it's basically gonna stay that way until, well, in about an hour from now. So, by the time we arrive, I do expect some rain, I do expect some wind, but overall good flying conditions. The same goes for our alternate over in Hahn, so that way we can just stick to Hahn as alternate, no need to take much more. Max in the comments, does this beauty work with a WinWing MCDU? To a certain extent. Right now it can't show the screen on the WinWing, but using MobiFlight you can do all your inputs using the keys of the WinWing, so it kind of works like halfway. Not perfect, but it kind of works. Now, departing Chicago on time at 0330, we're going to land half an hour ahead of schedule, but let's see if we are going to depart on time. I just remember the last flight where we left like an hour delayed, but we are gonna get there. Now, flight level 370, 390 later on at Jinja, but we'll keep an eye on that in the flight as well. And then let's head down into the fuel section, decide on what we want to take today. 50.5 is the planned takeoff fuel plus taxi, so 51.1. Another question, do we need any extra for that? I honestly don't think so, so let's call it 51.1. Well, we'll round it up to 52 tons and then we'll be good to go. And Alex from the chat asks, do you think it will be available next week for all of us? Well, I could imagine so, but I don't know. So, assuming it was submitted to the marketplace intake process yesterday or Friday or I don't know when, then I would see a possibility for it coming out this week, or, well, next week I should say. It's still Sunday after all, and yes, for you Americans, the week in the rest of the world starts on Monday, not on Sunday. Okay, so, fuel loaded, but I don't have any inside information on that, so it may or may not release next week. Okay, so, we've got our aircraft loaded. Let's head over to GSX and we'll start with the catering services over here. Oh, look at that. Bad jetway data. I clicked the connect jetway button beforehand. Now, let's all take a good laugh together. This is literally FS Dream Team's very own Chicago airport. together with FS Dream Team's very own Ground Shite X. Bad jetway data. Okay. So whom can Umberto blame this time? The airport or the aircraft maker? The jetway did work with this airplane in the past though. So yeah, let's see whom he's gonna get creative blaming this time. So no jetways for us. Okay. Alright, so catering vehicles have been ordered. The basic stuff down here is done. A couple of words on our aircraft. You might notice that it is pretty quiet right now. Unfortunately, my simulator volume is already turned up all the way, and iniBuilds have simply made it that quiet. But I did have a little chat with them this morning, and they said that they are going to lock the mixing, the loudness, as a bug over here, so that hopefully it will get better with the future. Alright, so a little word on the lighting. Currently we are on full dome light with the storm lights on. If you turn them off, that's what it looks like. Now, I will keep them on over here for the time being, and that's it. Now let's go ahead and do a little bit of actual pilot work, shall we? So the enter master levers are off, start selector norm, weather radar is off, landing gear lever is down. Let's have a look at the wiper selectors, they're off as well, and the battery voltage all above 25.5, and those things are on. The external power is on, and let's move up. ADRs 1, 2, and 3 coming on. APU fire test is looking good. It's rather warm outside, but the sun is no longer shining, so it should stay nice and cold here in our aircraft, or rather nice at 24 degrees or so. Let's have a very quick look at the conditioning page, and 16 degrees. Alright, beautiful. Then we don't need any APU for the time being. Alright, fueling is complete, so let's just go ahead, turn the signs on, also turn the emergency exit lights on, and then we can head right down into the EFB again, because there is a small point that we gotta discuss for today's flight, and that is the entire layout of our departure airport. So, FS Dream Team advertises their airport as accurate taxi signage layout, blah blah blah. The problem is that the FS Dream Team layout of the airport does not match the real world airport. So when we are using real world charts over here, our airport is going to look quite different than the FS Dream Team one. But well, it's still the best Chicago airport available, so we'll have to deal with that today. Now, we are standing up here, taxi probably up to the north, and then somewhere around like this, one of those intersections to it right is going to be our departure runway. So let's go ahead and select that on the preliminary takeoff performance here. And no, they don't have too many runways, not at all. So runway 28 right, synchronize the weather. Let's quickly see about our takeoff weight again. That's 212 basically down here. So weight is going to be 212 like that. Conf 2. Air conditioning off, calculate. Surprise, we can take off. And it's a very long runway, so we actually have some decent takeoff speeds as well with this calculator. Alright, so that thing is in there. And have an art, ask in the chat, do you like the CRT screens? People were complaining about them. Honestly, I find the canned complaints that we've seen from the community on this airplane ridiculous. There are some that are definitely justified, but you know, I love the way this airplane looks, and obviously it still has issues. It's an initial release version, but when I read stuff like, I had an argument with one guy in my own Discord channel this morning where he said that the primary flight display looks wrong. Then I posted a literal photo of the real world unit that I took at work, and right beneath that, I put a screen from the iniBuilds and his very own screenshot from the TOLIS. And he was like, the TOLIS is better. I'm like, well, I should probably be worried before I go to the doctor to extend my medical next time if the TOLIS looks closer. So, honestly, I think the amount of haters that are coming up on this plane is ridiculous. And while there is a lot of legitimate critique on the airplane, there's also a huge amount of purely ridiculous, I just want to spread hate stuff. So I don't really listen to much of what's posted there, because there's just too many, there's just too many chaps that post, you know, nonsense around iniBuilds aircraft these days. Like, yeah, the 350 had a couple of wasm crashes when it came out, even though I never had one, except for one with a pre-release beta version. And obviously the 350 got a lot of updates, but I thought it was perfectly flyable upon release. And yeah, if people want to say different, then so be it. But honestly, I think there is a lot of BS involved there, and a lot of stuff that I just can't personally believe. So I'll keep it at that. My opinion is that this is a very enjoyable aircraft, and I'll leave the rest of it right to it. Alright, cool. So let's go ahead and get to do a little bit of work again. So it looks like our catering is already done. So let's go ahead and see if we can actually request a boarding with bad jetway data at FS Dream Team's very own scenery. Let's try. Ooh. Can it? Can it be? That thing working? Bad jetway data. That doesn't look too shabby. Let's find out. Yep. That's the door. Don't ask me what FS Dream Team is doing. Strange people. But anyway, we'll take a seat again and we'll get working. An anti-cooperative, yeah, it should dock to 2 left by default. Maybe it has no data to dock to that, therefore it's coming to 1 left. I don't know. In any case, it's connected. That's literally all we can ask for. Alright, now let's continue with our setup. So we now know that we can take off. Let's do a recall over here for 3 seconds, and that's looking good. Oxygen pressure is good. Hydraulic quantities are good. Engine oil quantities are good. Flaps are up. That agrees with the lever. Spoilers retracted. Let's test our alternate brakes. So for that we got the ground equipment. Gotta remove the chocks for that. That's a little bug in the airplane right now. Here we go. Alternate brakes are working. And attached chocks again. That way we can actually leave the parking brake released right now so that the brakes can still cool a little bit from our previous arrival. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go ahead with our pre-flight procedures, which are fairly easy in this airplane. I mean, which are fairly easy in all Airbus airplanes. Airbus simply put a great design into their aircraft. Convince me otherwise if you want to, but I actually think that the Airbus design is superior to the Boeing design. It's just, you know, so easy to do everything up here. And I mean, just look at how quickly we're done with everything. That's just... I love it. I love it. Okay, so QNH is 3012. Horizon is aligned. It's the 6th of October 25. That's correct. Up here, everything's set. Frequencies, we'll just put in Honeycomb. And then we'll also put in the CTAF frequency. So just give me a second to check in vPilot what our CTAF actually is. If you didn't know it yet, you can just type .ctaf and then the airport code. So 12075. And then vPilot will tell you exactly what the CTAF frequency for a particular airport is. Alright, and that's now active. Next up, let's put 1 to 1.5 for the emergencies into the COM. Please change it over. Here we go. Always a little bit of delay when I use a lot of scrolling to change my frequencies. Not 100% sure what's causing that, but probably something within the sim that can't take so many inputs, because I did purchase a mouse that has no limit to the speed at which you can scroll, so that I'm able to do quicker inputs. And yeah, the sim struggles a little bit with that. But if you've ever been wondering, that is why I can do my inputs so quickly on the FCU and stuff like that. Alright, so let's start down here. It's an A340-300 CFM56. Nav database is up to date. Now let's go to the init page. Lots of stuff to clear there, and init request. Alright, flight plan is here, and flight plan is printing. Let's see, we're on Lufthansa 433, Chicago to Frankfurt, and all that stuff looks good. Alright, cool. So alternate is in Han, Lufthansa 433, costing 30, flight level 370. That's looking good. Now for our departure, we're going off runway 28 right. Let's try and find that one. Here it is. And there is no SID over here, so it's going to be radar vectors. And our arrival in Frankfurt will be an ILS, well, either 25 left or 25 right. Let's go ahead and plan 25 left for the time being, and then we'll see about it when we get there. Dixat 1 Alpha arrival, and we'll choose Delta Fox 626 as transition. Alright, insert that. Now the big question about the engine out SID, so that's going to be odd X. I'm too lazy to count this. I'll call it 1. And I don't care that number is wrong. So, from Chicago, runway 28 right / what's the runway track? 274 / 25 miles straight ahead, and PBD, down here it is. Store that one. Good, now secondary flight plan, copy active, and we'll call this odd X1. Put that in here. And then we can enter a holding on this one, like that, and then an immediate return towards Chicago. And here we go. So if we need a return, I'll pick 28 right again, because, well, it's a long runway. And that's it. And Artemis from the comments. Yeah, exactly. That time up here, the 6th of October, is my internal sim time. The reason I get it like that is when we go up here into the weather settings, then you can see I've set it to 2150 local time on the 5th, and that is 250 UTC on the 6th. That's because Chicago is 5 hours back from UTC. That's why that's a difference in the date. So that local time here is today, the 5th, and that UTC time, according UTC, already is 1 day further. That's why we've got the difference there. Okay, cool. So that stuff's in. Then let's go to the fix info, and we got Chicago runways 28 right on a 274 radial. Like that, and then we got the emergency waypoint odd X1 that we can insert over here. Now let's go forward with our performance data, and we'll get that one straight from the EFB. In the real world we take it from the flight plan because we wouldn't have a load sheet just yet. In the sim, why not? 160 tons and 27.2 is our CG. So 160/27.2. Alright, let's see about the block fuel. 52 tons it is up there, so we'll pick 52 tons. And now we gotta enter the other fuel figures down here as well, because Airbus, of course, calculates them, but their calculations are based on stuff that is not really used today anymore. For example, the alternate fuel is, unless I enter an alternate routing, is calculated based on maintaining flaps in config 1. Like, we don't do that. I think at the time the aircraft was developed there might have been a rule like that, but nowadays there certainly isn't. For this reason we always enter the actual figures from our flight plan over here instead of just relying on the automatic calculations. So 49 knots of tailwind going in here. By the way, here's something interesting. You can see the airplane automatically uplinks the winds. However, if and once winds are entered, you should actually not be allowed to enter anything in the trip wind field anymore, because it already has more accurate data from the wind that have been uplinked. Then again, in the real world, when you do the flight plan uplink, it does not automatically uplink the winds. So go figure what is right now. A little bit of a compromise that iniBuilds went for there. Can't change it. So, flaps 2 takeoff, and that's 55 degrees of flex temperature. Flaps 2, 55, and now for the speeds 48, 53, 58. Like that. Noise abatement procedure number 1. Engine out acceleration, we'll just call it 2200, and for the climb we're absolutely gonna go for D-rate number 2. And by the way, talking about climb and talking about performance, there may be something that's worth mentioning over here, because I see a lot of complaints about that the aircraft would accelerate too quickly, climb too quickly, and so on. So a couple of things that we can talk about in this relation. The first one is the flex temperature. So if you've got an incorrect flex temperature, obviously the airplane will be overpowered, and it will be overpowered by much. Now, there is one small problem. I don't know any actual takeoff data for an A340, but what I know is the data for the A330, and we actually had one occasion on video recently where I calculated the data for the A330 using my real-world performance tool, and I got a flex temperature that was much higher than what the iniBuilds tool calculated. Again, that was the A330. I don't know if they have improved that on the A340, but I just recorded a video where I did a more complete review of the flight dynamics prior to starting this live stream, and on that one we stood in Frankfurt with like 180 tons. We had 4 kilometers of runway and the thing gave me 53 degrees flex. Now look at this, 212 tons, which is 32 tons more, a runway that is just as long, and it gives me 55 degrees. So I am led to believe that the flex temperature calculated here might be too little, and therefore the aircraft may accelerate quicker on the takeoff run than what some of you might expect. So, well, there's that. Also, always think about entering your climb D-rate, otherwise of course the airplane is going to climb fast. So, with today's takeoff data and with the climb D-rate, I think it should actually be climbing just fine like we expect an A340 to climb. Alright, now that much about our performance. Let's go ahead and turn on the flight director, set our initial climb, which I believe to be 5,000 in Chicago, but let's go for the charts and find out. So sits, O'Hare, what is it, 8 or 9? I don't even know. Why do they have two departures with different numbers? That is not according to ICAO standard. But in any case, let's just go into one of them to find the initial climb. 5,000. Good, all we need. And the rest will be radar vectors anyway. And Tornado GHG, why don't you ask the SimReef calculator? Well, because normally it isn't 100% accurate either, but I like the idea, so why don't we actually do it? So let's bring up the SimReef calculator here and see what SimReef would say for our takeoff performance. So Chicago to it right, we calculated like 212 tons. Bleed auto, the weather is good over here. Let's actually take that in inches and calculate. So this one tells me flex 54 with flaps 1. Okay, let's change that to flaps 2. Calculate again. Yeah, 54. And the speeds would actually be a little bit lower according to SimReef. So as you can see, not really consistent. However, I'm led to say that the data from iniBuilds is actually a little more accurate than the data from SimReef here. Because what you can see on SimReef is it has pretty low numbers, and then it says speeds are already increased to improve the climb. Now let's try that again with the bleeds off. But yeah, look at that, same stuff. And I think that those speeds over here are too small for a 4-kilometer runway. So yeah, not 100%, but definitely worth a try, absolutely right. Alright, cool. So we've now got that stuff running. Now let's start the APU so that we actually get some sound going. I know that a couple of you must be thinking like, do you actually have your simulator sounds on? And yes, I do, but unfortunately, as mentioned, they are too quiet in the pre-flight and too loud in cruise.
Tango Tango to 27 left
They can
for a
do a little
Tango
bit better
Tango
than that.
departure. Departing to the west.
But the APU is
Chicago
coming. As soon as
traffic.
APU bleed is on, things are going to be easy. Okay, so we've basically done all the setups over here. Let's quickly test the oxygen masks. And that is looking good. Now, a bit more stuff to do down here in the CPDLC in preparation for our Atlantic crossing. So that's message record is checked erased, and then we can go to connection and status, and ADSC should read armed, not connected, but that's overall what we wanted to check, at least in terms of the stuff that is actually simulated. Alright, so that stuff's now decided on. Now look at that, optimum level 350, cruising 370, so SimBrief might not have been too accurate here. I mean, I admit that 370 sounded plausible to me. Certainly the A330 could go that high at 212 tons, so I thought the A340 would as well, but doesn't really matter. We'll keep that in there for now, and then we might have to change it in flight. Okay, so let's enter the step climbs, and that's level 390 at Jinja. And here it is. Well, and that's all for the time being. That leaves us with 300 kilos extra equals 3 minutes. Alright, easy going. So that's all the good stuff that we could do in terms of flight preparation here. Now let's see, the APU is available, so let's bring on our APU bleed, and then we can start with our departure briefing. So we're going off Chicago, runway 28 right. Radar vector departure, initial climb 5,000. MSA I think was in the category of about 4,000 or so. Let's quickly look that up again. Show me that chart, please. And zoom in on that chart, please. Yeah, 3,400. Okay, if if we just continue our flight normally, then we've got an extra fuel and time of 300 kilos, which equals 3 minutes. So now from the other side, hotspots for taxi out. So there are hotspots, which is the problem that we don't have accurate charts. So let's quickly pin those. That should be the ground chart south if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is. So we're parking up here on the ramp. We'll be pushing to the north, then Golf, Tango Tango, Bravo, and Lima Lima, or November. Actually no, that's Lima Lima, Echo Echo, November to the full length, I think. And then we'll just have to see what the actual scenery looks like. So we'll find out as we're on the go. We know where the runway is. We also see that one on the nav display. So as long as we end up over here, we're going to be happy with our taxi. Now, for the rejected takeoff, we will probably have a couple meters stop margin. Like typical stop margins on this type of aircraft are somewhere in the region of about, 100 meters, 200 meters, all the likes. Engine out sits straight at 25 miles to pick up a holding, and if we need to make an immediate return, we're above the max landing weight, but at this weight should be no problem at all to just return onto runway 28 right, and then we'll get down, then we'll get back down. Overweight landing procedure, if applicable, well, it will be applicable, rather, if time is available, and if no time available, we'll just start the APU, and provided that it's one of the left engines that had problems, if we had to fire an extinguisher into there, then we cannot turn on APU bleed. If it's one of the right ones, we'll close the cross bleed valve and then turn on APU bleed so that we can relieve the remaining pack in case of a go-around. And with that, I've got nothing further. So, nothing special, nothing non-standard. I don't see threats for today's departure. And then let's go ahead with the cockpit preparation checklist, please. Gear pins and covers are removed. Fuel quantity. 52,000 kilograms balanced. Seatbelts on, ADRs. Nav. And barrel ref, QNH. See, that's why we're doing checklists. QNH3012, cross-checked. Okay, cockpit preparation checklist is complete. Then let's follow up with the not HLA
Chicago
guidelines
traffic,
straight
American
away, so that we also have
2131
that
entering
one out of the way.
27 left, Tango Tango for a west departure.
So,
Chicago
aircraft
traffic.
acceptance and ETOPS pre-departure service check are checked, RVSM equipment checked, clock and GPS mode checked, HF not simulated, message log is checked erased, ADSC is checked armed, ATC auto position reports are not simulated, IRS full alignment performed, ground speed checked 0, not HLA waypoints on OFP versus primary flight plan cross-check, wind data entered, and that's the not HLA guideline completed down to prior oceanic entry. Wonderful. So we got all that good stuff out of the way. Then let's see what our boarding is doing. Completed. Good. So just a quick check that it didn't unload my stuff, because I've seen GSX do that. But this is looking very good, so let's go ahead and prepare the position for pushback and departure. With that on, let's turn off the external power. Park and brake is now also set. So, ground equipment, remove ground power, remove trucks. Arm the doors. Why didn't you close yet? Close, please. Okay, disarm the doors. Or arm the doors, okay. Here we go. Force lights armed. So, that stuff's done already. Kakashi in the comments, can you make a checklist for the A340 for us? I could, but you could also just take my A330 checklists. They're literally the same.
Chicago traffic,
And I've
American
uploaded that one to FlightSimTO already,
2131
so
on
you
the
can
roll,
check it out
7
over
left.
there. Alright, so 2 minutes to schedule departure. Let's do a last minute check of the load sheet. 160 and 27.2. Down here it's 160, 27.2. CG 29.5, and that's correct, 29.5. In the real world, the measured CG on the ECAM has to be within 2% of the CG from the load sheet. Alright, so that's looking very good. Our takeoff data remains valid with that. Trim setting is 4.2 up, 212 tons is correct. So slash up 4.2. Here we go. Okay, and that's our takeoff data completely entered. Then at this point we should, by the latest, already ask for our clearance. However, at the moment I don't see any ATC online for our place, so that
left.
is, well,
Departing to the west.
fine, so
Final
no,
call, Chicago traffic.
no clearance, but we did get that automatic squawk, which is 3206 today. So, squawk 3206. Alright, good. So, that stuff's done. Then let's move on. Normally we'd be going for the pushback clearance now, but since there is no air traffic control, I suppose we are just going to push on our own here. So, beacon on, transponder on, before start checklist. So, park and brake and chocks, brake set, takeoff speeds and thrust. V1 148, VR 153, V2 158, flex 55. Windows, closed, bacon, tasty, and that's the before start checklist complete. Ground from cockpit. So, please confirm that all the doors and hatches are closed, ground equipment is removed, and the bypass pin is installed. That's all confirmed, Captain. Okay, so we are clear for push and start, facing north, and the park and brake is set. So continue pushback and nose left, please, facing north on the apron. Alright, park and brake is released, we're ready to go. And that's what I call an on-time pushback. On the minute. Doesn't happen too often. Really doesn't happen too often. So, Ulan asked a little bit earlier in the chat, does it handle realistically? Yes, I think so. It's pretty close. Alright, we're clear of the street, so we'll be starting engines 1 and 2 in that sequence. Engine 1 start. By the way, now you can really see the night lighting in full effect here. Pretty beautiful, isn't it? I really think iniBuilds did a great job on that. By the way, one more thing for us to do. Let's head over here and give her the en route map night. That way it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, we have 10% N2, so engine 2 start. And Joshua, in the chat asking, what thrust lever handles are you using for the A340 on the Bravo? I'm using the ones provided by Honeycomb, the Honeycomb Airbus pack. So, pushback completed, set park and brake please. Brake set. Sabi, I'm fully with you. I like the old Lufthansa livery as well. Especially on an airplane like the A340. And Nico, yes, I transferred most sceneries from 2020, but I did also buy some of the upgrades and new ones, obviously, for the new sim. But, you know, like 95% of the sceneries for the old sim work very fine in the new one, so just copy and paste the community folders. And Sundar, no, this is in Flight Sim 2024. Spoozy, yes, I'm a huge fan of the moving map in the real world. Really huge fan of it. Starting number 4, could have done that a bit earlier, but doesn't matter. Okay, so that looks like a good start. Number 3, waiting for number 4. There's the ramp agent already running away. It takes a little bit of time to start the engines on this plane, but... Chem, do I prefer the A340-300 or 600? Well, I haven't seen the 600 in the sim yet, so I can't really tell you. It'll be exciting to see what Aerosoft and Tolas are going to be able to come up with. But for the time being, we only have the 300, so I can't tell you yet which one I prefer. If you're asking me about the real aircraft, then I'd go for the 600 because of the more advanced systems. Alright, and 4 engines are available. So, ICE 1 aircraft, that means no auto trim. CG 29.9, here we go, that's set. Okay. Flight control check. And Onyx, this is a pre-release at the moment. Full up, full down neutral, full left, full right, neutral and the rudder. Handle that one slowly, full left, and full right. And neutral. After start checklist, please. Anti-ice, off, ECAM status, checked, pitch trim, 29.9%, rudder trim, neutral, after start checklist, complete. Alright then, we're clear on the left side, and we're clear on the right side. O'Hare traffic, Lufthansa 433 heavy, taxi runway 28 right, Golf. Alright, lights are dimmed, let's go. So just give me that bit of floodlights down here. So, brake check. Pressure 0. And Lou Schmidt, yes, you're absolutely correct expecting that we will be using time acceleration in cruise. It would be boring if you guys had to sit here for 8 hours, right? Sander, if you want to know about my settings, I do have a dedicated video on them. So do check that out. Alright, so we'll get clear of the apron now, and then onto golf, off to the right. So this must be golf over here, because there would be a runway straight ahead of us. Okay, and just like in the real world, it's pretty hard to actually see the taxi light at all. So let's go ahead and turn that one to take off so that we can actually see something outside. We do that a lot in the real world. Now, something unpredictable asking in the chat, do you use the scenery for Chicago? And yes, we do. It's FS Dream Team. Anti-cooperative, do I think we'll get Navigraph to implement frequencies on the world map? Oh. See, I even start coughing. I would hope so, but I think their current API doesn't support it. Could we get them to add it? I don't know. I really don't know. But we can always try. Okay, so let's try not to mess the taxi up here. Right on Tango Tango, and then the second right on Bravo. So Tango Tango is over here. By the way, something I would appreciate to be added to the aircraft would be, you know, a little bit of taxi rumbling sound and that kind of stuff. You definitely do hear some in the real world. Okay, so second taxiway to the right, just making sure that there's nobody around, but that's looking good. So second to the right, which is going to be Bravo. And then from there, it should be an easy way to the holding point, I hope. Now this is one particularly dark spot of the airport, isn't it? Interesting question from Spoozy down there. What do I think is the best rendition of a CRT display? Is it this one or the CRJ? Honestly, it's been a while since I've used the CRJ, so I couldn't tell you straight away, but what would the difference between the two be? I'm not aware of any. Okay, so we're now going southbound on Bravo, so we're gonna follow that all the way until we would eventually reach the runway, and then make a left turn onto November, and then to Yankee for a full-length 28 right departure. Let's not go faster than 20 knots here, because it's really been a long time
Higher traffic, United 535, off of Bravo 6, Bravo 9, taxiing to runway 22 right.
Okay, where's that guy?
Section to 28 right, via Alpha 10 November. O'Hare.
Alpha 10 down here, okay. Probably not going to be much of a concern for us. But we'll have a good look out. So that's Victor coming up. Victor is one prior November. So we keep going straight over here. Can't see that United anywhere, so we'll just keep going. One important thing when operating on CTAF or Honeycomb or whatever on VATSIM, when someone makes an announcement like the gentleman just did, always have a good look out, see if he's relevant to you, and only then I would respond to that. Alright, down to 10 and off to the left onto November. Loving the oversteering here. Okay then, so far so good. So, from now we just go to the full length, which is indicated by the lights, so now it's easy going. So, squawk is in, transponder is on, and takeoff config is checked. And roadside, welcome as a business class member to the channel. So, taxi checklist please. Flight controls, checked. Flap setting, config 2, radar predictive wind shear, on and auto, engine start selector, norm, ECA memo, takeoff, no blue, taxi checklist complete. O'Hare traffic, Lufthansa 433, heavy line up and takeoff runway 28 right. Alright, the left side is clear, the approach sector in front is clear. So we'll take the second of those taxi lines here. Cabin crew, prepare for departure. Lineup checklist please. Takeoff runway, 28 right full length, TCAS, TARA, PAX 1 and 2, off, lineup checklist complete. So a little bug here, the status page just opens whenever something pops up on it. Should do that. Left side's clear, right side's clear. Let's just take in the atmosphere here. Fantastic, isn't it? Okay, are you ready? Take off. Stabilized. Manflex 55, SRS, runway, auto thrust blue. Knots, checked.
V1.
Rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. Nav, checked. Man, this is lovely. This is lovely. So, thrust decline 2, open climb heading, auto thrust. Flaps 1. Speed checked. Flaps 1. And match that runway heading, please. Here we go. So that waypoint is on a heading of 022, then let's just turn right, heading 030. Flap 0, speed checked, flap 0. Incredible. Really incredible. So, reaching 250. Let's continue that climb up here to 10,000. And we're approaching heading 030. Rollout might have been a little bit quick here, but still flying manually. Really enjoying this. Okay, and here we go. So I think from now on things are going to get a little bit calmer here. Just flying straight towards Rainer. Autopilot 1. And well, with that, we're up and on the way. And Laxap asked in the comments, is there an option to disable the entire cabin like you can in the 350? No, there isn't, but the cabin is by far not as performance intensive on the 340 as it was on the 350. So I think that's going to be just fine. Now let's go ahead and proceed direct to Rainer. Now, climb. Okay, and then let's go all the way up. 370 is planned. I think 350 is the more reasonable level here. Yeah, look at that. 350 is more reasonable. We'll start there. Here we go. That's better. And then we can always step before we enter the ocean. And Davios, if you're looking for my settings, I have a dedicated separate video on it. So you can definitely check that one out. Cloud Surfer, what would I do if I saw a drone right next to me while landing? And what impact on this recent drone activity does the recent drone activity have on aviation? Well, reported to ATC, the result is going to be that they are going to close the airport, but by the time I've seen it, it's already too late. So by that time, I would have landed anyway. By that time.
Clear traffic,
so I'm
9535
and screen brightness
sign up
down.
runway 22 left.
I think this is looking good, isn't it?
To the east. Over there.
So Toronto is going to be the next station that is actually online. Until then we can go ahead and use time acceleration as we want to. Now guys, I have no idea how much the airplane is going to cost. They didn't tell me. I don't know. So, past the 10,000 here, the lights are going to stay on since we're in the US, but the passengers can already be released. We don't need any constraints anymore. Airports for sure. Well, clear and copy, please. Small railroad fact, when you open the fixed info page, it should always do that on page number 1. I've submitted that one to me already. Alright, so 350, 350, 376, and we'll just redo the step clocks here because the EFOP obviously becomes rather unreliable. at the moment, since I removed the original cruising level. So let's just go down here. Enzo is our North Atlantic entry, so let's tell it to spend time in Enzo. So where's that? Enzo. Oh, what is it doing now? Okay, delete, that's a bug. So 370 at Enzo, and then the other one, I think was at Goma. Let's see real quick. At Ginger.
O'Hare traffic.
Alright.
So 2984.
So now the fuel prediction should be looking better.
The Victor
Yep,
2, Victor,
getting that just about on point.
O'Hare traffic.
Good. Now let's change over to the general uniform since we're no longer in the immediate vicinity of just O'Hare. Hello there, what's coming behind us? That gentleman had some time acceleration on. Sure did. And overshot the turn. So, who is this behind me? Lufthansa 623. Shouldn't that be like a Middle East call sign? 6 something? In any case, let's go ahead and turn on some time acceleration ourselves here so that we get into the vicinity of our destination by the time that we can expect the ATC over there. Okay, so, nicely out of Chicago, 4x acceleration is on for our flight. We'll have to talk about, oh yeah guys, the simulator volume. God, iniBuilds, you need to fix this, you need to. I've just halved the simulator volume, now I should be able to understand me a little bit better. Okay, so transition altitude is going to be next, and when that is done, then we've basically done everything we needed to. Now J380 asking in the comments, when would the engine start selector not be at normal for takeoff? We'll get to that in a second, just set's done that. And standard thrust check passing flight level 189 now. Great, landing lights off. Let's, you guys tell me, shall we turn the dome lights on or shall we keep it this dark for the time being? In the real world, you'll find pilots who are going to do both. You're even going to find some pilots who are going to turn the floodlight off, but that's definitely not going to be me. I will keep that one on. But you guys tell me if you want me to turn on the dome lights or not. Now, getting back to J380 as to when you would use the engine start selector and ignition start for the takeoff. That's basically when you got very strong precipitation, like for example when you're flying through, well, I don't want to say flying through thunderstorms because that's always a bad thing, but you know what I mean with that. When you've got very strong precipitation, then you turn the engine start selector to ignition start, otherwise you basically keep it off. Nick and Hollander, do I know if PMDG has a 787 in the pipeline? Well, I know what they hinted at, and they basically hinted at, yes, they want to do one at some point in the future, but there's not been any confirmation or stuff. They just said they want to. They didn't say they would at this moment. No. Now, Nikolai, ETOPS with 4 engines, what are you missing? Well, you're missing the fact that ETOPS doesn't really mean... ETOPS doesn't really mean twin engine operation. In fact, ETOPS is an outdated term. So nowadays it's correctly called Extended Diversion Time Operations, and you have to follow it whenever you're more than 60 minutes from a suitable airport. So for that reason, any aircraft, whether it's 2, 3 or 4 engine, or 8 engine aircraft for that matter of fact, have to follow ETOPS rules. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we get closer to the North Atlantic. And Peter Caruso, in your opinion, this is just the default A330 remodeled. Well, you're entitled to your opinion, but I don't have to agree with it. And obviously, you know, I hope you do know that the real A330 is an A340 remodeled, right? Now, someone tell me again that this airplane doesn't climb. Respectively does climb, as you want to see it. And Daff, yeah, I'm fully with you. Phoenix A330 Neo would be lovely. Definitely be. By the way, also look at those lights. Those are lovely as well, aren't they? Are we still over Michigan, or where are we right now? Ben asked a bit earlier, if you turn on or off the seatbelt signs in the cockpit, does the cabin wheeze on and off? No, it doesn't. Man, just gotta love those views. I'm kinda hoping that we might see some northern lights as well today. I definitely saw some when we flew quite a bit more southerly at 53 north just a week ago. So I'm really hoping we might see some today as well on this route. So, somewhere over here we're going to enter the Toronto airspace. Well, that means we'll have to stop the time acceleration somewhere over here and give ATC a call. That's going to be 125.755. Like that. Mach Altrus da. Altrus. And here we are, level 350. Let's check the OFP. Should have taken 26 minutes with 43.5. We took 31 minutes with 45.8. So we are 3 tons ahead. Well, but we also took a bit longer, so we'll do the next check when we'll overfly 47 north, 80 degrees west, so that way we don't have to worry about that anymore. So that guy behind us there is definitely using time acceleration as well, and he's blocking our step climb. So, well, so be it. If we are blocked, then we are blocked. Not much we can actually do about it. Now, Ben, what do I think about the FMS of the iniBuilds A340? Well, I think that it covers the majority of stuff we need. Destination info below min. What is that? It isn't. Extra 0.2. That's a bug. Ha. Lovely. Okay. Nice little bug. Anyway, 4.7 on arrival is going to be absolutely sufficient for our flight today. And Poutine Flyer. Well, you might be sure that time acceleration is not allowed on VATSIM, but then I do recommend you to read the Code of Conduct again. Alright, so we're leaving US airspace in a few moments. Let's check that on the en route map once again. Yep, leaving the airspace in a few moments. So let's go back to real time and call traffic control. Toronto Center, good morning, Lufthansa 433, heading flight level 350. Where's that shit coming from? The guy's 1,800 above us. Stupid T-Class. Yeah, thank you, I've had it. And obviously I dialed the wrong frequency. 775 it should be.
2038.
Toronto, good afternoon, Lufthansa 433, heavy level 350.
And for Lufthansa 433 Toronto, just down. November 72, Mike Echo Toronto, you're identified, thanks. The cabin's altimeter is 3022. You need any weather notecast there? It is a Class E airport, so I've only advisory services for the cabin.
Alright, yeah, no, we got the weather. Just letting you know that we're here.
Okay, Rush, thanks. You can change back to the mandatory frequency in St. Catharines, and that is St. Catharines mandatory frequency is 123.25.
12325, thank you.
Lufthansa 433, Toronto.
So Lufthansa 433 heavy is currently entering your airspace from the southwest and flight level 350. At least according...
433 Toronto, squawk in.
Squawking Island 433.
Delta 738, fly your present heading.
So, let's see. Squawk and ident.
Toronto, Speedbird 5 Alpha Charlie, Charlie 36, wanted to see if we need to contact you for push or just taxi.
He seems to have some problems
Speedbird 5
finding
Charlie,
us.
I'm going with your PDC identifier, please.
But at least according to the en route chart, this is where Toronto airspace should be.
876 November for Speedbird 5 Alpha Charlie, heavy Airbus 350-1000.
Speedbird 5 Charlie Alpha, reback is correct, thanks. You can push lane 5 straight back to call for taxi.
Lane 5 straight back, call for taxi, Speedbird 5 Alpha Charlie, heavy, thank you.
WestJet 2404, the winds are calm, so take up to 3 caller 1.
So let's see if he's going to identify us eventually. Let's just give him that ident again.
Delta 994 is ready to start. Identifier 8760 and got information alpha.
Delta 994, the reback is correct. So here, push straight back, call for taxi.
Straight back, call for taxi, Delta 994.
Sure. Lufthansa 46, correction 623, squawk it in. Lufthansa 433, you're identified, thanks. Lufthansa 46, correction 632, correction 5. Lufthansa 623, you're identified, thanks.
You're giving him a hard time, my friend. You're giving him a hard time. And Dumpy, In the chat, yes, pilots absolutely have
Push at
an en route map,
2404,
just like
radar
this one.
departure, climb,
And obviously you will have your
15
position on
down.
there as well. At least in decent airlines. There are some, think Ryanair, that don't invest into technology like that, but yeah. In decent airlines you have that kind of stuff.
Sorry, who's calling?
So, since some people are always asking, since some people are always asking, in order to be allowed to use time acceleration in VATSIM, you got to get clearance from the air traffic controller, and I had just sent him a PM asking him for that clearance, which he has just granted by a private method.
No, I didn't
so
get
that
it
way
yet.
I can now proceed with acceleration again.
Yeah.
So, as you can see, I turned the TCAS to TA
2404,
only because, I don't know, the guy above us is like 2,000 feet above, and for some reason TCAS goes crazy about him, so that's definitely a bug.
Star 4 U, 49 uniform, push lane 4 straight back
Now,
already.
Team Motivate, do I have any info about the A340 ACJ?
Okay,
No, I don't.
then push nose to the west.
At least not for the time being.
Drop there, American Box, they're 11.4.
And CG, I have a question. If a NOTAM says that there is a different list approach procedure in use due to a broken VOR, do you need to manually insert it into the flight plan? I would recommend to do that. Otherwise, you'd have to fly it manually, which I wouldn't recommend.
330.
And Pedro, can we already say this A340 is worth to buy? Well, the question whether something is worth it obviously always comes together with the question how much it costs, and we don't know the price yet. But I would say that irrespective of the price, this is definitely an aircraft that I enjoy a lot. So, is it worth it? Probably. But then again, it will depend on how much it will cost. So, I would say if it's anywhere within a reasonable range, like, you know, most other aircraft are these days, then I would say absolutely yes. If it costs 100 plus, then probably no, but we've got no indications to think that it might be that expensive. In fact, the fact that it will come over Marketplace kind of suggests to me that with a bit of luck it'll come at a very good price, because, you know, there's Microsoft behind Marketplace, but we'll see about it. We don't know yet. Now, Aero Vienna 400 will comment. I have a question, Emmanuel, because you fly the A330 in real life. How does it fly by hand? Like, is it a bit stiff like the A340 or extremely sensitive like the 350? Oh, it's much like the A340.
The 738 fly heading to
I wouldn't say stiff. Airbus wanted to give you that feeling of the fly-by-wire. Or rather, with the fly-by-wire, Airbus wanted to give you that feeling of the aircraft being very heavy. And that's why when you make an input, there is like that split-second delay before it responds, and then it responds, you know, very gradually. So it takes... They make you feel some inertia. And, well, I would say that iniBuilds have captured that pretty well. Both on the default A330 as well as here on the A340.
Sure.
And goes Roboter, will it be Marketplace only? Some people have said that. For the first couple of weeks or month, we don't know how long, but initially it will release on Marketplace only, and thereafter it will also come to the iniBuilds store. We can only suspect why that may be. My personal suspicion, and I don't have any inside data there, my personal suspicion is that since it reuses some of the code from the default A330, which was made by iniBuilds, Microsoft probably were like, well, but then we want to earn something on this as well, since we paid for the development of that code, and perhaps that's the reason why it comes to Marketplace only at first. But we don't have any like certain data about this. We can only suspect that.
Taxify Alpha Hotel Short 23, the altimeter 30.
Alright, so passing 80 west,
3022, runway 23
42.7
Alpha
at 1
Hotel.
hour and 2.
And hold short of runway 23 Delta, Speedbird.
And
Charlie Alpha.
we are 2 minutes ahead and should have 39.7, so we are 3,000 kilos ahead with our fuel. Now, I can't really explain why we are 3,000 ahead, because we definitely didn't load that much extra fuel. We loaded like 1,000 more, but okay.
A350 on Alpha, Taxify Alpha Hotel Short 23.
Keeping right for the A350, taxi by Alpha Hotel, hold short 3, Papa for my uniform.
Now, Kakashi asked, in real life, do you only use the third MCU for departure clearance and any request, or can you also use the first and second? Oh, generally you can do all of that on any MCU, so data link is not limited to one particular MCU. What we do in the real world is we do CPDLC on the front unit and ACARS on the center unit.
Okay, stand by.
That's how it's standard operating procedure in my
I'm
airline.
at on-tech cleared island, or cleared localized at 26. Cleared localized at 26 for record box.
And Peter, the FMS isn't fully modeled. Yeah, that's true. However, most of what is normally used is modeled, with a couple things coming post-release. Like at the moment, if I want to do a complete flight according standard operating procedures, then the things that are missing are saving of the route. Well, that is technically not missing, but it caused me 2 wasm crashes, so I consider it inoperative at the moment. So saving of the route, then equal time point, optimum step climb. We only have planned step climb implemented at the moment. And it doesn't accept like all waypoint names.
Delta 994.
Apart from that, though,
Give way to a
apart from that, I think it's working pretty nicely
350 on Alpha.
and has, you know, everything that we'd be using on a normal flight.
What's up to the Qatari Alpha Hotel?
And Blue Schmidt, do I think there is a reason why the third MCU isn't working? Well, I'm very sure there is. I'm very sure there is a reason. Now, iniBuilds told me it's due to infrastructure. Whatever that means. My personal guess, since Microsoft didn't want to have any Hoppy integration and stuff like that in the default A330, they didn't model it back then, therefore the third MCU was not needed.
Toronto, Speedbird 5, Charlie Alpha, we need to pull off
obviously
for
you don't
maybe
have a
5
third
minutes to
MCU
fix
on
something
aircraft like
we
the
gotta get out of your
A320
way.
family that iniBuilds did. You don't have
Speedbird
one
5,
on the
Charlie Alpha,
A350,
makes the
so
next
they would have to
left
develop
turn
that
Bravo,
unit as an
taxi by
additional
Bravo,
unit.
hold short
My
of
personal
hotel.
guess is that they are going to do it
Left turn, and we'll
post-release,
join
but I haven't heard
Bravo,
anything for
hold
certain
short of
from
hotel,
them
Speedbird 5,
on that
Charlie,
topic
thank you.
just yet. Now, someone's been asking about offsets. Yeah, I forgot those earlier. One of the earliest beta versions I had it, and then they removed it like less than a week ago because it still had a couple bugs. My guess is they removed it so that they could release the airplane and that they're going to add it again, you know, with an update a little bit later.
WestJet 2404, down service terminate now, change under.
Go down, WestJet 2404.
And Aaron, is the A340 CPU intensive as the A350? To be honest, I can't tell you for sure because I never monitored the actual resource usage. But what I can tell you is that I'm getting better frame rate with the 340 than I did with the 350.
I'm getting you confused. Can you go again?
Cross runway 6 left.
And Blue Schmidt do all the sunshade work on the airplane. Yeah, they do. So where's number 2? Here it is. 2. Now somewhere here. Here. Should be somewhere over here. Suppose we'll have to get up and find it. Let's just do it that way. Here and that's the last one. Should be somewhere over here. Okay, I need light.
Stanza 433, surveillance service terminate, chain over.
Look on the 433, over to you, come check.
Canada's
Alright, so as you can see, all the sunshades are working. And boy, we will be using them when the sun goes up. But for the time being, it's just nice enjoying the night over here and the lovely graphics. But I think it's not going to be too long until the sun actually starts rising.
Yeah, you flight 24 left.
We'll expect electrical left there.
Daryl, we don't know about a release date. Can't tell you for sure. Now, just give me a second over here. Now, there's a question from AeroVienna once again. Are there any significant changes when flying the A330neo? No, there are not. So the Neo is a little bit more responsive on the controls. And obviously the engines react slightly differently, but let's not get into those kind of details. The main difference is that the Neo is a little bit more responsive than the A330CO. Actually, there is a retrofits package available for the CO as well, but it would require new computers.
Sorry, 490.
By the way, let's turn the TCAS back on since the other aircraft isn't close anymore. So, oh yeah, Metal Eye, less in-op stickers, absolutely. Yeah, but there is a retrofit package available for the A330CO that would put some faster computers in the plane, and then you'd get the more responsive fly-by-wire system. However, there has not been any implementation of that, at least on the COs or on the CO simulators that I've flown. So the Neo a little bit more responsive, the COs not so much. And we were sent back to Honeycomb, so let's go back there. Distillation EFOC below min. Oh no, it's below min. But I tell you what, optimal level 365. There is no traffic nearby, so let's actually go up to flight level 370 now. So, first time climb on cruise level 370 blue. And suddenly we do have 7 minutes extra fuel again. Surprise! And Berg V, why is the direct page not like in real life? It is like in real life. But you gotta understand that iniBuilds modeled the Honeywell MCDU, or rather the Honeywell FMS, not the Thales FMS. And what you see, for example, in the Phoenix Airbus is the Thales FMS, and they do have a couple of differences, the direct page being one of the most notable ones. However, I have already flown on Airbuses that had these units installed here, so that definitely happens. And Mach all cruise. And anti-cooperative, is there a reason why we're on TA only right now? Yes, there used to be. There was another aircraft immediately ahead of us, and for some reason, even though it was stable ahead of us, TCAS went haywire, thinking that an aircraft 2,000 feet above us, not moving vertically, would be a threat to the flight. Which obviously it wasn't. So, yeah, that's something that they still have to work on. Definitely something they still have to work on. Now, let's see, we are slowly getting into the areas where ETOPS is going to start to matter. For the time being, on the right hand side there's Montreal, then ahead we've got Goose Bay. Let's actually pull some weather. So Montreal, current, and then we can also go for Goose Bay already. And we'll just take the current one from there as well. Okay, so Montreal, 23089, slightly variable, 15 miles, sky clear, 25 degrees, beautiful. And Goose, southerly winds, clear skies, 11 degrees, likewise beautiful. Alright. So that's going easy for the time being. At the moment there is also no Oceanic ATC online, so we are running just fine towards the point. And I can't pronounce that username, my apologies for that. But what is the limits of TCAS supposed to be? It's limited on closure rate, not on any altitude. So when you, well, there are altitude limits as well, but let's take the common cases here for TCAS. So basically 40 seconds prior to a potential impact, TCAS is going to issue traffic advisory. That's traffic. 20 seconds prior to a potential impact, it's going to issue a resolution advisory. So therefore, if you've got an aircraft that's flying, say, 1,000 feet above you, no issues as long as there is no vertical movement. Now there is an altitude range as well where TCAS can actually cause you a resolution advisory when both aircraft are level, but I actually have to look into the AFCOM to find out what exactly that altitude range is. So let me quickly do that and look it up for you. Obviously I cannot do that on the stream. I would be losing my job pretty quickly if I streamed my AFCOM. So just give me a moment here to find it for you. Okay, so the AFCOM does actually not include the exact altitude. Or actually it does. So depending on the aircraft altitude, there is a little table in the AFCOM. At cruise level, so between 20,000 and 42,000 feet, you will get a resolution advisory if the aircraft is within 700 feet of your altitude. And traffic advisory if it's within 850. So yeah, there's your numbers. Below 20,000, it's usually 600 feet, and below 1,000 feet, it's only if the closest time is within, don't let me lie to you, 20 seconds. Alright, so there's your numbers. Domatan, do I have any plans to do a series for a virtual 737 type rating? Yes, I do. When the PMDG will come out for FS 2024, then I'm probably going to redo the tutorials. Now, Svelas, how much work is left on my 777 ebook? I would say the last 10% or so, but as with any software development, I consider that software for that matter, you know, those just take the main time. I wrote like the 90% that we already have, basically during a time where where I had holidays, but ever since, it's just hard to keep, find the remaining time to get that done. Now, those weather radar indications don't really seem right to me. I mean, we seem pretty clear up here, even though it gives me some lightning ahead of us, but I think we're clear, so I'm gonna stick to, but tell you what, storm lights on. After all, we don't want to kill our eyes. But let's put that on until we're way clear of the thunderstorms. Now, Oliver, any thoughts when this will be released? No, unfortunately not. And jet-only pilot, Emmanuel, are there situations where you are using the flight path vector indicator? Yes, that's whenever we are flying manually without flight directives. And that's really the only one. Well, not the only one. When you do FPA approach, then you'd use it as well, because it's the only way to get the FPA mode up. Alright, and we're clear for thunderstorms, so let's put the lights back to turn. So, let's go a little bit further up in the chat over here, see if I missed anything while I've been doing those previous, previous explanations. But if I missed any questions, then do put them in the comments now. I don't think I did. And yeah, we just don't know about the cost or the exact release date yet. It shouldn't be too far off, I think, but we don't know for sure. Ooh, a little wind shift here. So we're going to enter the North Atlantic. There's still no ATC online for there, so that's already good. But let's go ahead and do a little bit of the stuff that we need to do for our transatlantic crossing. So starting down here, let's start checking our waypoints. We need to do that before we are allowed to enter Atlantic airspace. So, starting down here, we go from Enzo towards 57 north, 050 west, and those coordinates are checked. Then we continue towards 58 north, 040 west, coordinates are checked. Then we continue towards 58.5 north, 030 west, and that checks as well, the halfway point is there. And then 58 north, 020 west, checked as well, and then on towards Gomo. Now let's do the track and distance checks. So from Enzo towards 5750 we've got 066 degrees, 249 miles, and that checks. Then we continue towards 58 north 40 west on 075, 325 miles, that's check as well. Then we continue towards 58.5 north 30 west on 080 degrees, 317 miles, that's also checked. And then we continue towards 58 north 020 west, 091 degrees, 317 miles. That's also checked. And then towards Gomop 091, 317. And 096, 328. That looks better. Alright, good. So then we would have to enter a constant Mach number, not simulated at the moment. And, well, that's that. We assume that our oceanic clearance is given. Level 370 looks like a good level. We are flying a random route. For this reason I will stick to the semicircular rules, and I will not go to like level 380 or so. But, yeah, that's that. Now Daniel asking a comment, how good are the physics? I like them. Plane flies well, taxis well, I like them. Especially the taxi model is nice. And Fonmas 15, speaking of big birds, is the default 747 in 2024 any good? It's, well, for beginners it's okay, but if you're looking for something study level, then I would say, nah, rather not. And is the Salty still used in the 747? Honestly, I haven't followed the Salty mod too closely, so I can't really tell you. I'm sorry. Alright, so a couple more things to do. That's to put our ETOPS waypoints in. And I just want to take a safety measure here. Autosave. Create save now. We'll just call that en route. Create save. Oop. That was a little turbulent. Did you see that? I think that iniBuilds is not intercepting the commands properly at the moment. So when I typed that file name, that plane went a little haywire. But here we are again, looking good. But what I really like is when something like that happens, autopilot disconnect, it automatically throws us back to real time. So at least we're not going into the ground at like 4x time acceleration. Here we go again. Okay, so let's enter some of our oceanic waypoints here. So, stored waypoints, new waypoint, ETOPS entry point 1. And this is gonna be on 5702.3. And 49440. Store that. New waypoint. This will be our equal time point. This is something that iniBuilds still needs to work on. It only accepts some very specific entries here. It should accept like all waypoint names that you can possibly come up with, as long as they have the required length. So that's something that they can still improve for a future update. So equal time point, and then we also need an exit point. That's going to be 68, 27, 8. No, 58. And 3158.6. Alright, now let's insert those on the fix page. So that's our ETOPS points entered. Then let's just grab the latest weather again. So Goose Bay, Motar and Tough, and here it is. So Goose is still excellent at the moment, and the Tough is excellent as well, nothing to worry about. Would be very nice if we could print this, because it would surely be a little bit more, it would surely be a little bit easier to read when we had this on like a large screen, but so be it. Now let's also grab Keflavik real quick. So Keflavik, forecast is pretty good, and the current weather is awesome. Beautiful. So that's about everything we had to do here for the time being. And then we can head out towards the ocean. Now there is no transatlantic controller online. You can already see that I'm checking that regularly, but for the time being there's no one online there. Now, Alpha Apollo asked in the comments, Emmanuel, as a commercial pilot, do you ever find yourself thinking about flying fighter jets, or for example helicopters and stuff like that? Or were the airlines always the direction for you? And for me personally, the airlines were always the direction. I would absolutely love the performance of a fighter jet, but I wouldn't shoot at anyone. So, since those machines are built to shoot at people, those are not for me. Helicopters, I would actually find them pretty interesting. At least like rescue helicopters and stuff. But I gotta admit that the pay that you get there is so incredibly bad that, if I'm completely honest with you, I wouldn't want to fly a rescue helicopter. If they paid the same salaries that airlines would, then I would consider it, but not for the money that they're offering. And Elton, if you buy the A340 on Marketplace, will you be able to update it via the iniManager when it releases there? Yes, that's what the iniBuilds CEO, Ubaid, said on their Discord. He said that it will be no problem to import the aircraft into the iniManager later on. So, Paul P, does it have a working taxi cam? No, it doesn't, because the real one doesn't. Only the A340-300 has a taxi camera. The 300 does not have one in the real world. And likewise, obviously, in the sim it doesn't have one either. However, when we are talking about taxi cameras, then it may be worth talking about what Aerosoft and Tolis have previewed already. So looking at their video, it looked to me like they basically just took like a satellite image or something and kind of inserted that as a taxi camera. So it doesn't show you what you actually see in your simulator, but it just shows you what, you know, you might have on a sat image or so. Not sure where they get the data from, but it didn't look very close to what you actually saw outside the window when you viewed that video. So not exactly sure what Aerosoft and Tolis are going to offer. They do advertise that they will have a working taxi camera, so let's see what they're actually going to have. And Kakashi, do all variants of the A340 not have a brake fan? Nowadays, I'm not sure. I could imagine that Mahan Air, for example, would definitely have one, doing short turnarounds in very hot weather. But at least the Lufthansa and the Edelweiss fleet, as far as I'm aware, don't have it. But it is available as an option, so you can select it down here in the EFB as well. Let's find it real quick. Well, configuration settings probably here. You can enable the brake fan if you want to, but then again, Lufthansa doesn't have it, because in the 90-minute minimum turnaround time of the airplane, the brakes will usually cool sufficiently. Now, the A330 and A340 have similar landing weights, and on the A340 the center gear does not have brakes, only the main gear have brakes, so we can compare a little story here. I recently went into a 2,300 meter runway with the A330, so a really short runway for the airplane. And of course it wasn't located at sea level either, so it was located a little bit higher. So I was actually forced to use auto brake medium for the first time in my entire career flying the A330. Now, I can tell you one thing, that auto brake is pretty effective. However, you can imagine what that did to the brake temperatures. We arrived at the gate and the temperatures were at about 500 degrees, so really hot. Now, what did we do then? Well, release the parking brake as soon as the chocks are in position, which we normally do anyway, and the airplane could depart an hour and a half later without any problem. And anti-cooperative, could we please get a pinned message regarding that the release is not disclosed yet? Yeah, I think so. Oh no. There is a TCAS target again. 30 miles behind. Yeah, that's fine. But you gotta be at least 40 miles behind if you want to follow me on the Atlantic like that. 40 miles is the minimum that you'll need over the Atlantic. Okay, and because you guys asked nicely, yes, let's pin that message that at this time there is no release info or pricing known. William, yes, we are using time acceleration, 4x over here. Because, you know, we want to make it in an evening. That's one of the things that I like so much about you know, the A350 as well as the A340, and of course the PMDG 777 as well. Those aircraft, by featuring time acceleration and by behaving under accelerated time, those aircraft enable you to fly a realistic long-haul flight in the length of an evening. So within the length that a typical flight simmer would have available. Now, it would be even better if we could get 8X in iniBuilds aircraft as well, but yeah, we don't have that for the time being. But I personally do really believe in time acceleration. I know that there are quite some flight simmers who say that no, time acceleration is not realistic, don't use it. And then of course all those childish comments like only real flight simmers or real flight simmers only use real time, blah blah. Those same people, when they fly long haul aircraft, either fly them on short haul routes, which are in the majority of cases not realistic. Now Edelweiss does operate the 340 on a couple of inter-European routes, Palma de Mallorca, Larnaca, and I think a couple more. But you know, at the same time, when they do that, they're completely missing the true experience of flying a heavy wide-body, which is completely different to flying a wide-body that is loaded up 100 tons below the max takeoff weight. And obviously, they don't operate the airplane in the environment that it's meant to operate in. So when those people say that it's more realistic not to use time acceleration, then I usually ask them, okay, so how do you fly then? And the answer is either short haul, or I depart in the evening and land in the morning. And then I'm like, okay, so you're not witnessing your flight at all. How realistic is that? Go figure from there. So we're passing Enso now, and let's see, 3 hours 10, 27.7, we got 3 hours 9, 29.8, so we're 2,000 kilos ahead on the fuel, and 2 minutes ahead in time. Perfect. And Daniel is asking how good the flare feels. The flare is good. You got a flare at 40 feet, pitch up a degree or two, at 30 you pull the thrust to idle, that's good. What's not good is the touchdown itself, because the landing physics of those wide-body aircraft are unfortunately not, I think, not able to be modeled properly in the sim. Because the way that you land an A340 is you first land the aft wheels of the boogie, then you land the front wheel of the boogie, and then you land the nose wheel. So yeah, not exactly very realistic, because the simulator only supports one single main landing gear and not a boogie. Therefore you only have a single main gear touchdown, and then you gotta fly the nose wheel down. So that's unfortunately something that is not exactly perfect yet. And Kakashi, when flying over the ocean, do we do something like using a secondary flight plan to program possible diversion? There are some people who do. Personally, I don't, because I'm always of the opinion that I have so much time available in case something happens. Of course, I'm always aware where the next airport is. Like right now, I know that Goose Bay is right behind me. So if something happens, 180-degree turn, back to Goose Bay. But at the same time, you will have at least an hour until you actually get there. So why would I waste those 2 or 3 minutes pre-programming a secondary flight plan? That's not worth it. Know where the alternates are, and know in what direction they are. And that's really all there is to it. And Dave, do all airline pilots get an ETOPS rating or just the ones flying long haul? Well, there is no real ETOPS rating. there is an e-learning that you have to do and that you have to revise like every, I don't know, year, every 2 years, not 100% sure. But that's it. Then you also need to do an area qualification, which is also doing a 2-hour e-learning, and then you need to do 1 flight with an instructor in that area. So 1 time going there, 1 time going back. So 2 flights. And that's what you do in order to get qualified. Now, do all airline pilots have that? No, obviously not. But does it take long to get? No. There is no official exam and stuff like that required. It's just you do the e-learning, then you fly back and forth with an instructor, and then you're qualified. That's all there is to it. And Alexandro is asked, does it take fuel and time into consideration when I'm operating in time acceleration? Yes, it does. So those problems that existed on the default A330 have been fixed for the A340. As you can see, we are now 3 hours 25 in the air. In real time, that's probably an hour, and we've already burned 23.6 tons. So that's working absolutely perfectly. And Max, the Tolus 330-900 simulates 2 touchdowns well. You should give it a go. Yeah, I'm sure it does. X-Plane allows for these things. Unfortunately, it looks so horrible that I just can't convince myself to try it. The graphics in X-Plane are just... I don't know. I mean, 20 years ago, Microsoft Flight Sim looked better than X-Plane does nowadays. So, no thanks, I'm passing on it. Whenever they convert it to MSFS, I will be super happy to fly it. But X-Plane, not my sim. Others may think different, but for me, visuals make like 50% of the immersion. The rest coming from good systems, physics, etc. But visuals are so important for me that I just can't get myself convinced to use X-Plane. And Dumpy has asked a little time ago, could we do the flight to Wolf's Fang on the live stream? Yeah, eventually, I think. I missed the event yesterday because I had other stuff to do. But, yeah. And Darius asked a little bit earlier, I have the same sim settings as you, but my sim is looking bad. Okay. Have you tried to do any mods or anything? Because, sorry, I do often see that people try to make their sim look good by modding it, but actually what they achieve is that they make it worse. And there are many people asking me, like, why does your sim look so good? And I always tell them, it's the default sim. No mods. Except for, of course, the standard stuff like airports, aircraft, and AI traffic and stuff like that. But apart from that, I don't use any visual mods. So when people say that my sim looks so good, then my usual reply is, well, it's default. Now Janis asked a good question there, what do I think about the flight dynamics in FS24 compared to real-time for both small and big aircraft? Well, honestly, I think that they're okay. There are a few things that could use some improvements. Mostly the transition between flying and being on the ground, so liftoff and touchdown. Liftoff, I think, is something that it's just the developers not getting it right, because, for example, Phoenix has it right. By the way, overflying 50 west, time for a fuel check. Always do one at each waypoint in the Atlantic. So 50 west, 3 hours 40, 25 tons. We got 3 hours 41 and 26.7. Interesting, so we're actually losing time right now. And we lost 300 kilos of fuel compared to the last waypoint as well. So just a quick check to make sure that we are not running with a fuel leak. Fuel use 25.3 plus fuel on board 26.1. If I add the two, I end up with 52 tons. So that's actually alright. Okay, then it must be the Simri flight plan that's not entirely accurate there. So be it. Can live with it. .37 is still the best level for us to fly. Can go to 3.9 later on. Can also put Goose Bay down here. Just have that reference to where it is located, readily available. And we're ETOPS now. And I think the sun slowly starts coming. Yeah, it is. Looking forward to that sunrise. In the meantime though, very nice view on Milky Way, but unfortunately no sign of any northern lights. You do really see them often over the Atlantic in winter. So I had a little bit of hope, but looks like it's not today. Okay. Also, we're on the Atlantic for 10 minutes now, so let's set Squawk 2000. And here we are. So a little bit earlier, the chat asked what the ETA would be in real-world time. Well, let's see. 11:41, so that's basically 4 hours from now, so in about an hour. Plus, of course, the whole arrival and descent that we're going to fly in real time. So I tend to say it's going to be an hour 15 to an hour and 30. And Hen021, do I think that the default MSFS looks a bit too yellowish? No. But it's difficult because the real world looks so versatile, you know? In winter it's completely different than in summer. At every time of the day it's different. So I would say that MSFS looks okay. And anti-cooperative, sometimes you're wondering, in every stream flying transatlantic has had Squawk 2000 10 minutes after going out to the ocean. What is the reason behind that? So the reason is that you are crossing from one, like, huge area into another. Now, the goal is that you do not have a double squawk, because that can confuse the air traffic controller systems. So, therefore, when you fly out to the ocean, you keep the squawk for 10 minutes because within that time you are leaving radar coverage. You know, you normally keep your VHF frequency when you enter the Atlantic until you can no longer receive the air traffic controller. Because if there is a problem with the oceanic clearance, if a possible conflict could arise and the domestic air traffic controller can still see it, then they could still reach you over the radio and warn you. However, once you switch to Squawk 2000, they will very likely lose your correlation and therefore will no longer be able to assist. For that reason, when you're entering the Atlantic in the real world, you keep the domestic frequency until you can no longer hear ATC. And as a rule of thumb, we say that 10 minutes after entering the Atlantic, and it's not just a rule of thumb, it's law as well, then you switch to Squawk 2000, so that by the time you arrive on the other side of the ocean, you are not going to squawk anything different than that 2000, which other controllers might also be using on that side of the pond. So there could be two aircraft using the same squawk at the same time in both Europe and the United States, for example. And well, that's the reason. Okay, so we're approaching the equal time point. That means Keflavik is going to be next. Let's quickly get a weather update for Keflavik. Yes, no, maybe? Let's try that again. No. Interesting. Anyway, the last was just some showers in the vicinity, so it should still be good. Well, we're flying the equal time point now. And here's Keflavik, 700 miles on 050 degrees, so over there. So, let's enjoy the sunrise. Just passing south of Greenland, but still no sign of northern lights. That's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. And graphics. Which turbulence settings do I use in my sim? Well, it depends a little bit. I aim to use realistic, but whenever I fly Phoenix, since Phoenix wants them to be on low, I set them back to low and then I forget to set them back to realistic. So yeah, I would want to use realistic, but I mostly am using low, because I just forget. And Sid Tasker has asked, what Mach number are you cruising at? It's normally about 0.81 in the A340. 80 with tailwind, 81 under other conditions. If you want to go fast, if you want to make up some time, you can go 82 on a typical 8-hour flight that gains about 10 minutes. But that's it. Now, Shurik 888, will the A340 be compatible with the Winwing FCU and MCDU? I don't have their FCU, so I can't tell you. But I would imagine if it works with the default 330, then it's going to work with the 340 as well, as that part of the code is definitely shared between the two. And the MCDU can be used using MobiFlight at the moment with the profile for the A330, so you can make all kinds of inputs, but you don't actually get a screen indicating an output to you. I have of course asked iniBuilds to enhance that in the future, but at least for the time being, that's not available. Now the realists Pepito, do you know if they've included the 300E variant or if they plan on doing so? Honestly, I don't think the E is included at the moment, and I don't know about their future plans. I'm sorry. And Flyer on Sim, we are using 4X at the moment. I would love to use 8, but unfortunately the aircraft only supports up to 4. But we can live with that as well, can't we? So let's see, optimal level 380. Any traffic nearby? No, there isn't. In that case, let's climb up to level 390. First time climb, I'll cruise flat level 390 group. And Bot says in the comments, I do wish that a server would update the night skybox because the stars are really low quality when you zoom in a little. Are they? Oh well. I wear glasses in the real world, so those are higher quality than what I would see. Alright, we've passed 40 west. Let's do a very quick fuel check here. So 4 hours 17. Well, we're a little bit past that already. And 21.5. Let's see what we had. 40 west. 23.1 versus 21.5. Okay, so we're 1.6 ahead still. And we were overhead at 0802, so 5 minutes ago, so at 4 hours 17. Alright, so the time is spot on now, and we are still running fine on the fuel. Even though we've lost another 100 kilos, but I hope that the current step climb is going to solve that for us. William, thank you very much for the €5 donation. Is this type of A340 with 4 Philips hair dryers under the wings? Oh yes, this is that type of A340. Here it is. By the way, lovely sunrise, isn't it? You can nicely see the shadow of the Earth over there. And just look at this. That looks seriously good, doesn't it? Like, seriously good. We can also view that from the inside once more. Look at this. And Captain Quinn, does the iniBuilds 340 support Hoppy? Yes, it does. It supports Hoppy, Sane Tensions, and Beyond ATC. All three. So, Bury Sale asks in the chat, in your opinion, the rate of climb is still too much. It should be between 1,500 instead of greater than 2,000 feet a minute. What do I think? Well, I think that the first thing we would need would be an accurate takeoff performance calculator. Once we have that, then we can actually comment on the rate of climb after takeoff. The problem is, at least with the default A330, that the flex temperatures calculated by the iniBuilds tool are much lower than those calculated by the real-world tool. For this reason, obviously, you are going to climb at a much different rate. And the flex temperatures that are calculated by the iniBuilds are definitely rather low over here on the 340 as well. So my take on it is that we can't really judge it, but I think 2,000 feet a minute should be fine, provided that we have, you know, a little bit low flex. And Umbra, the PVI actually worked in the last live stream, but it only does so after you touch down. So when you review that live stream, then you can see that once we were on the ground and on the rollout, we actually saw the unit go left and right over here. And adding, when is the top of descent? In about an hour or so. And look at that sunset, sunrise, that way around. That looks good. Obviously, in the real world, we wouldn't be sitting here watching the sun. We would be sitting here like this, and would be complaining that it's shining into our... and would be complaining that the sun is shining right into our eyes. But in the sim, this just looks nice. And Onyx, welcome back to the flight. We are like in the almost very middle of the Atlantic now. We're about to reach 30 degrees west, which is what pilots generally consider the middle of the North Atlantic. And Tom, do you think the ini340 is overpowered, considering the real one is slower in rotation? No. But we cannot judge the rotation rate in combination with how much power the aircraft has. There are pilots and there are pilots. Some rotate, you know, like they jerk off. And others are really, really careful on the stick, especially during rotation. And there are so many chapters in the Flight Crew Technique Manual that tell you not to under-rotate, but on many videos that I've seen from the real aircraft, people are not rotating quick enough. I don't know why. Afraid of tail strike? I don't know. But there are many where they just rotate much too slow. 2.5 to 3 degrees per second, that means 4 seconds until you reach 10 degrees. Now rewatch those videos and you will notice that those people take a lot longer. Alright, and now I think it's time to get those things down. And you can have yours as well. She already got the sunglasses on though. Yeah, hi there. And yes, no worries, I'm already going away again. Could just have put your sun visor up as well, then I wouldn't have to come even close, you know? And that's when they write a report about sexual harassment then. Okay, no, I'm joking on this one. And Chris, writing in the chat, hey Amy, what marked the hate around this aircraft? Seems fine to me, of course it has some minor bugs. Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you honestly, in my opinion, the reason why there is, or why there are like, call it maybe 100 people in the community who are hating immensely on the aircraft. Those 100 people are probably made up out of two groups. There is one group for whom the A350 was just too expensive, and therefore they started hating on it. That is something that you can notice all across the flight sim community. If an aircraft is priced high, it gains a lot of haters. Now, passing 30 west, let's quickly do the fuel check, thereafter we continue this discussion. So, 30 west, 452, 18.4. We took, yeah, a little bit longer, and we are now 1,000 ahead on the fuel. Huh. We are losing fuel quickly compared with the flight plan. Well, we'll keep going, we'll keep monitoring, and then we'll start deciding. Okay, so, back to the haters. So yeah, there is that one group for whom the add-on is just too expensive, the A350 that is, and therefore they just start on hating anything iniBuilds. Then there is one group that is disappointed by the performance of the A350 and therefore start hating. And that one is kind of understandable, even though not the hate, but at least that they get frustrated. And then I think there is a third group. And I got no idea how large that group is, but it will not be small. And that third group is made up out of pirates who are unhappy that the airplane will release on marketplace only and therefore they can't just pirate it. Well, and that's when they go hating. Of course, next to all the haters, there are also a lot of people who voice valid critique. So don't put them all into one box. So So there's also a lot of people who voice valid critique. So traffic coming 5,000 feet below us. Let's see if we can see him. I think he's passing to the left. Anywhere down here. Come on, mate, just turn on. There he is. Down there. By the way, a lovely light here, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, there are a lot of people who, you know, voice valid critique as well, which is of course absolutely justified, and the add-on is definitely not perfect, so that's valid critique to be voiced. But I do find that the flight sim community has grown so toxic. Well, grown so toxic is difficult. I think it all started back in the day when FS Labs released their Airbus. Prior to that, I didn't really notice that much hate. Yeah. You know, the majority of those people I don't even look at anymore. And when I get those comments on the channel, I just delete them and block the guys posting them because, you know, I can't be bothered even dealing with that. Valid critique that's posted in a constructive manner is of course always fine, but the haters, I don't know what's wrong with that group. But the good news is that something that I noticed for sure on a lot of my videos is that while there are like, well, how many people may those be, you know? 5,000 people watch a video and there are like 15 hate comments. The problem is, since there may be 20 or 30 comments of people who don't post hate, it looks like it would be like a third or maybe even half of the people thinking that way. But that's really a completely distorted view, and that is very evident on the number of upvotes versus downvotes that videos get. And the ratio of those on my channel is normally about 98% upvotes versus, you know, 2% downvotes. And that really shows that the majority of the community are just the silent but positive people and not the haters. Alright, so let's get that important thing back down, the sun trades. So if anything goes wrong, there is Keflavik on our left. And we can switch to the daylight map as well now. And then we're almost in Europe already. That's going quick today. And Elton, what different versions are there of the A340? Now, in the real world, there's the 200, 300, 500, 600. And in the simulator, for the time being, iniBuilds is doing the 300. And at some point in the future, Aerosoft and Tolis will do the 600. We have not heard any other announcements, even though it may, of course, be sensible for a developer to also expand to the other types. So I wouldn't be surprised if iniBuilds announces the 600 later, or if Aerosoft and Tolis announce the 300. And Gabor, yes, time acceleration is absolutely on. We are doing 4x at the moment. So that's basically doing Mach, what's that, 4.2 I think. Oh no, it can't be, 3.2. And Fruity95, nearly every community is getting more and more toxic, but as you say, it's always a minority. Very loud one, but it's a minority. Yes, absolutely. I do agree. I really don't know what's wrong with the internet. Perhaps it's just, you know, children getting access to internet devices. earlier and earlier in their life, and therefore spreading hate because it's cool? I don't know. Chris, which Lufthansa livery do I prefer? In general, I like the new one better, but on the 340 in particular, I'm really a fan of the old livery. I guess it's just because the A340 is a plane that's about to end its life cycle. Another 2 years until Lufthansa will get rid of them. So it has a little bit of that classic vibe to me. So on the A340 in particular, the older one, but in general I do like the newer livery best. Now when Lufthansa announced their new corporate brand identity, I was a little bit split about it, especially, you know, when they announced that Lufthansa Black. You know what I mean. But I've grown into it. I've grown to like it, and I gotta say that I really like their new identity nowadays. It looks nicer on the aircraft. And Chris, do I know why Lufthansa took so long to replace the A340s? Oh yes, I do know. It's basically the fact that Boeing is not delivering. So Lufthansa was supposed to get the first 777X, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in 2019. And it's still not here. So therefore they have to keep the older aircraft until Boeing is finally able to deliver. Nowadays things start looking a little bit better. The 777X is, you know, getting closer. The 787 is also getting delivered. Also Airbus is delivering new 350s now. So that's why they are phasing out the older aircraft now. Right, passing 20 degrees west, one more fuel check, and then we're done with the Atlantic. And we should be here at 5 hours 27, 15.2. And we're here at 5 hours 30, so we're now lagging 3 minutes behind. We got 16.4 in the tanks, so 1.2 extra. That means we've lost another 200 kilos of fuel. So yeah, we're losing time and fuel. Would the wind have been that much better at lower altitudes? Where's the data block? Say 20 west, 370. Oh yeah, 7 knots of wind more. And even 15 knots of wind at 30 west. Well, that's the reason why. Now, in the real world, the aircraft would have adjusted the optimum altitude. It would have actually told us to stay in level 370. It would have set optimum 370. Because the optimum altitude in Airbus aircraft should be wind compensated. That's the reason why when this said optimum 380, I climbed to 390. But looking at the flight plan, it would have made more sense to stay down low and enjoy the greater tailwind. But okay, so be it. We gotta live with that now. And Chris, is it the same case with the 747s in regards to when they are being phased out? Yes and no. Yes for the 747-400, no for the 747-8. There is one big reason why Lufthansa is able to operate the 747-8 and actually make a profit with it. And that's the fact that they don't have to pay like exceptionally high maintenance cost on the aircraft, because Lufthansa Technik is maintaining them anyway, so they got that covered. And look at the airplane. The business class covers the entire upper deck, and except for the nose, which hosts the first class, which is even more expensive than business, you know, the business goes from after the first all the way to the start of the wing. And then you've got premium economy behind that. That is a huge number of business class seats. I believe it's like 80 seats or so. And then of course you also have the 8 first class seats, or 10 even, not 100% sure right now. And that makes a huge difference. They couldn't put that many business class seats in any other aircraft type except for the A380. And therefore, the 747-8 actually earns Lufthansa money. It's the huge number of business travelers. And Team Motivate, can I do a review of the Winring with a minor Airbus stick? Well, probably not a full review, but I'll have something coming for you. Now, Fruby95, how would I rate the performance of the A340 in sim? Better than the A350, much better. I would say similar to the A330. And Metal Eye, do I know the architect? Of course, I've seen him live already. The realist Pepito asks, do I know if this is the MCU that a classic 300 would have had? It looks a bit modern, but I can't really tell. Yes and no. So, define classic A340-300. If you mean one in the early stages of the aircraft's life, like 20 years ago, then no. But currently, yes. Because the new unit can be retrofitted into the older aircraft, and on many aircraft it was. Now there are definitely still some flying around with the old unit as well, but for the time being this is a realistic configuration of the aircraft. By the way, look at that wind, 95 knots tailwind, almost 560 knots ground speed. I do like that. And Ben, are they hinting at a release date next week? Depends on Asobo and the marketplace intake process. And Metal Eye, what's my favorite song of the Architects? Honestly, I can't tell you. They got quite a bit of nice stuff. But I wouldn't have one favorite. And Sandro, you got a little bit more precise there. Is the FMC bug still there in the iniBuilds plane in MSFS 2024? Well, you gotta be a little bit more precise than that, which bug you mean. And 1CAG, Scottish control is online starting at go mode on 13553. Perfect, we can already dial that one in. And thank you very much for the hint. Here we go, 13553 is already pre-selected. Now Chris, very good question. Do I work less now that the holiday season is finished, or is it still the same busy schedule? If we look at the pure numbers, we should fly less in winter. However, my personal experience, and rosters may vary between pilots in the same company, but I've always had less flights in summer now that I'm on long haul than in winter. In winter it's usually really 4 or 5 long hauls. You know, you fly somewhere, you go back, you fly there again, you go back. Why is that? Well, I'm doing touristic operations. So long haul with touristic destinations means that in summer there is more stuff in the United States. But in winter, people want to go to the Caribbean, they want to go to the Indian Ocean, they want to go to South Africa. So personally, I've always flown more in winter than in summer on long hauls. Obviously, in short hauls, it was the other way around. Now, Michali, if there was an ideal opening, would you get an A340 type ready to fly cargo? No, probably wouldn't. I like the job that I'm doing at the moment, and I would probably still stay there. And honestly, It doesn't matter to me whether I'm flying a 330 or a 340. That makes no difference. Obviously it would be nice to fly with 4 engines for once, but, you know, do that once and then it's okay. Alright, and here comes the contact me from Scottish, still outside his airspace. So let's go back to real time and give him a call. And let's also see if he's got CPDLC. Scottish, good afternoon, Lufthansa 433, heavy flight 390.
Lufthansa 433, Scottish Control, good evening. Squawk 3206.
Squawk 3206, Lufthansa 433 heavy. Okay, 3206, here it is. And let's see, does he have CPDLC? Yes, he does. Echo Golf Papa X-Ray.
Scottish Control, good evening, N-line 0 kilo, flight level 18647.
So, ATC menu, connection, and I think I might have to change this over to VATSIM to Hoppy real quick. Let's see. Third party settings, Hoppy. And Echo Golf Papa X-Ray, notify. Notified. Okay, so reaching Gomo. That means we're getting out of the nut. We are on cost index, we are not offset, north ref is off, and data is active on the third audio control panel. Alright, and that's everything we could do down here. Alright, current unit, Scottish Control. Thank you.
Paper 44 Papa Mike, thank you. Climb flight level.
Company message received. Well, I doubt it. That's really a weird implementation. Alright, here we go. Great, so let's do one more fuel check, see what we're up to at the moment. So, Gomo, 6 hours 3, 12 tons, and we got 6 hours 5 and 13.2, so yeah, we lost another 100 or 200 kilos here. But so be it. And hi Charlie, nice to see you in the comments. I'm doing well, thank you. And Aryan, what's the maximum level for the A340 at very lightweight? I believe 415? And Scottish tells me that he can't give me time acceleration because the next sector is quite busy. Well, then just give it to me until I enter that sector. What does Watt glasses say? Where is the next sector? Okay, so your cruise time acceleration for the next 100 miles. So that's until we are 110 miles prior to Tala. So let's do TLA/-110. We'll have to go to heading to do that. Alright, so for the next 100 miles approved. PD waypoint is in there for 100 miles.
Red 06, Yankee passing message. Red 06, Yankee.
And I suppose once we get into the London airspace, we'll have to deal with the associated controller. And Charlie, we could also have drawn a 110-mile ring around Chala. That's true as well. That would have worked as well, but I'm not too used to using rings on these aircraft because in the real world we don't have rings on the A330. Well, we do on one aircraft, but not on all the others. And Stefan, yes, the A340 now supports direct with beams. That's now modeled. And one CAG never bought anything on Marketplace. Can I pay with PayPal there? Yes, you can. And Chris, when I was a student pilot, which widebody did I dream to fly? Actually, the A330. And Archie, do I ever miss flying the 737? No. I don't. At all.
To Manchester is filed. We are at time 390. 7 Whiskey Mike, Scottish, good evening, clear to Manchester, via Lisbon and the limit 603.
Dave Wilson, I'm very happy to hear that the static video helped. In anti-cooperative, yes, the distance rings are definitely optional.
Clear to Manchester via Lisbon and it's filed, climate issues 6 fleet score 7507 EV669. ET6, 7 Whiskey Mike, on correct, just check your squawk 7504. Apologies, 750 squawk 7504.
Now, we're about to reach the end of the 100 miles that the controller had granted us. Now let's see if we can get any approval to use acceleration for a little bit longer, because I don't want to be stuck flying another hour or so in real time here. So, what's the matter with the airspace over here? Let's see, what does Vatspy say? There is nothing here. There is literally nobody here. Why is he not granting approval for time acceleration? So yeah, I've just sent him another message asking if acceleration might be available at a different flight level. I'd be happy to climb or descend if necessary. Can't do level 410 yet, but anything further down would work for me as well. Okay, he says I will be handed over to the next controller. That's fine.
Airbus 44 Papa Mike, direct to Airbus. Speedbird 44 Papa Mike, redirect Airbus.
Interesting. It's really hard to see what kind of structure they have with, what kind of airspace structure they have up here. And one CAG, I'm not 100% sure how the airfields on the ND are filtered. I think there is some filtering going on, but don't ask me the details. But we can definitely say that, you know, looking at this, there would be many more airports over here if this was completely unfiltered. There would be lots of general aviation airports. So not 100% sure what kind of filtering is going on over there, but there is something going on.
Was collecting the links over to Green West down to 7 station staff to on the
Now, Dave Pilot, very good question. I wonder how much these optional software things cost when you order them on Airbus. Is it something like 5,000 euros extra or more? Well, I don't know details, but it's probably more. Okay, kind of Scottish 135855. Loco and send 35855. Scottish Control, good evening, Lufthansa 433 Heavy, flight level 3 miles away.
Lufthansa 433 Scottish, thank you.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what they do in the real world. Just thank you. That's their way of saying identified.
Easy 676 Delta, direct right. And easy 676 Delta, report your direct and cleared level to Scottish 135530, bye-bye.
By the way, talking about the number of airports that are visible on the MD over here, in the real world, it works quite differently to how it does in the sim. So in the real world, airlines actively choose the airports that they want to have in their database. For example, one thing that I always notice is that we don't have Edinburgh in our database. You would think that Edinburgh is a fairly large airport with aircraft like the A340 flying
ready,
there.
flight level 260 level at input.
Instead we just have Glasgow.
Alright,
so the number of airports shown in flight simulations is generally much larger than the number of airports that you would actually see in the real world. Okay, so let's log on to this CPDLC. Let's go D.
Easy 305 Scottish, thank you. Climb now, flight level 200.
Right, and notified.
Easy 574 Echo, direct input.
Alright, so this controller just approved time acceleration here as well, so let's go back to 4X. Once we're like at the Dutch border, then we no longer have to worry about time acceleration anyway. Still says company message. Alright, that's fine. climbing Scottish 13553. Lufthansa 433, confirm you want us to go back to a Scottish 13553.
Hey, because by the time you do it, you'll probably be outside my sector.
Roger. Okay, in that case, we gotta return to real time because we gotta get... Scottish Lufthansa 433 is back on your frequency.
Lufthansa 433, thank you very much. Happy for you to go forward, tiny acceleration until 20 miles before Rocksat. That's good.
Thank you. Hyperdrive approved until 20 miles prior Rocksat, Lufthansa 433. Okay, cool. So, let's find that. Rocksat. Slash -20. Here we go. PD waypoint is in. And then, of course, yeah, CBDLC stuff again.
Scottish control
It's never getting boring here.
35.8.
Contact, EG,
Speedbird 44, I'm making cut control 13585, that's the ATT at over.
What is those say company message up here?
Easy,
Oh, yeah.
67 Whiskey Mike, someone for all the driver, request push and start. Easy 67 Whiskey Mike, stand 14, push and start approved.
Those automatic handlers don't seem to be working that well just yet.
Push and start to QNH 1017.
Hope they're gonna improve that with future updates. And J380, does the video button work like in every other iniBuild aircraft? Can you check? I can check, and it does work. So the current ADC, Scottish control. Thank you. God, this having to view all those messages here is annoying. Should shut up. Current Scottish, thanks. That bug is a little annoying. Alright, and as you can see, the video camera is working just about fine.
And easy, yeah, make sure it's going to hold it Delta 1 after departure.
Let's close that again.
Correct.
Alright, can definitely turn ATC down again a bit. I think this should be better. And yeah, the wind noise is just annoying. Now, Alpha Apollo, you want to see a wind view? Well, be my guest. Here it is. Now, have I considered using head tracking? I have considered. I've actually tried it as well. I do have a Tobii eye tracker, but I got to admit that when flying airliners, I don't find it that useful, because it's very hard to keep your head pointed at something and keep it so motionless that you can actually make inputs on like things like the autopilot panels or the FMS. So for that reason I prefer using the head tracker for VFR flights, where you need to look around much more, and of course when, you know, doing aerobatics and stuff like that. But overall I kind of like doing the camera with a mouse. It makes things a little bit easier, and I definitely do like doing that. And anti-cooperative, does my company have the camera, or do we need to look through the spy every time? We have the camera on every aircraft, even though it's different between the different types of aircraft. On some you have the camera down in the ECAM. On others, you got the camera with the monitor in the back over here, and on most of them, you actually have the camera on the EFB. So the EFB is connected with a data link cable to the airplane, and it not only gets stuff like position data from the aircraft's GPS or FMS position, but it also gets the camera. Nikolai, no, I don't think the 340 simulates noise-cancelling headphones. At least I haven't seen it. But let's see if we can find that somewhere. But I don't think so. Settings, audio. No, there is no noise cancelling over here. Config settings maybe? No. 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 And no. Okay, so definitely no definitely no noise cancelling there.
6,000 feet.
Okay.
Okay, but you have to do
So let's give you guys another wing view here. From the other side this time. Looks good as well, doesn't it? By the way, funny to see the aft part of that fairing over here is actually white compared to the other ones, which are painted in Lufthansa grey. And if you look that particular aircraft up, it actually had that white replacement part at one point. And Charlie M, do I actually ever do these sim flights overnight or just change the sim time? Sometimes I do them overnight as well. It always depends a little bit. You know, take a flight like this one that we're doing right now. If I want to record this for the channel, I would need approximately 3 real hours to be able to record this. Compared to that, if I don't have those 3 hours available, I could also depart in the evening and then land in the morning. That saves me like an hour and a half of real world time that I can, you know, just go to sleep. So that option definitely exists as well. Okay then, we're reaching 20 miles per hour ROXAT, so let's return to real time here. Like the controller asked. And here we are. Then we're probably going to get the Honeycomb handoff any moment. And that's it. And Luca, why does the A350 not have a trim tank like the older A330 and A340? Now that's a very good question, and we can actually only speculate on the answers. My main suspicion is that the A350 does actually, well, let me phrase that differently. There's a lot of pumping of fuel involved. And when that thing goes inoperative, then you actually have quite some restrictions. Well, now, I've never seen the trim tank or anything associated inoperative, but I could imagine that since there are pumps involved, since the tank needs maintenance and stuff, that Airbus has at some point just figured that if they don't put a trim tank in the back, the overall cost maybe actually goes down because of the reduced maintenance cost. It's my best bet, but I don't know for sure.
The Maastricht sector does look a bit busy, but you could almost try your luck if you can contact Maastricht now, please 135 decimal
435 is 1960. Thank you so much for your help and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
And you can.
Perfect, what I haven't Lufthansa 433 Heavy Throttle 390.
Lufthansa 433 Maastricht radar to evening identified.
So let's see, we are now 177 miles from the top of the sun, landing in an hour from now. We'll check if we can do time acceleration until the shoreline.
Golf November Alpha Whiskey Sierra Maastricht radar to evening identified.
So that's 13596.
Correct.
Russia Freddo, good evening, Rhino 1 Hotel, Yankee 369 inbound.
Final 1 Hotel, Yankee, Master Radar, good evening, identified.
Okay, so what's that? Connect master? Yeah, thanks. Orange case. Alright, so time acceleration improved until we reach the shoreline, and we really won't need it any further than that, so totally happy with that. Thereafter we're going to do the rest of the flight in real time. And another one of those strange company message things here. I really don't think I'll solve that bug soon. So hand over, thanks, contact, thanks, and yeah, that's it. So let's see if we can already grab an Asus. So Frankfurt arrival, then we also need arm, and we also want Stuttgart. Here we go. Send, send, send. Now, did FS traffic actually spawn some aircraft here, or are there aircraft at our altitude? No, I think there's actually aircraft at our altitude ahead of us. So let's return to real time here. And well, we are more or less on the shore anyway now, so should be fine.
There is no free AC available at the
all right, great. So
we can
start with the setup of our arrival. So here's some weather printouts.
The next sector is just closed, so at the moment there's no
So Frankfurt information Delta at 1750. Expect Yankee right or 25 left.
And Golf 50
left and right in news. 210 at 7. Clear skies 11 degrees 1016. Wow, that's much better than I thought.
290 Golf Yankee, you can
So that's pre-selected, then let's go ahead and start preparing for our approach.
Maintain current decimal and report when ready for descent.
Roger to you. 280 log will maintain the current flight level and will code around 11 o'clock.
So APC East.
United Sports Lee, there is no safety in the next sector. Monitor 12.8, bye-bye.
AGC as well. Then we need the Dixat arrivals.
Final 726 Gold, contact Bremen radar 126 decimal 325.
So Dixat 25 left, right, center.
126 325.
And finally the arrivals. Let's see, where are they? That's Yankee 25 right. And ILS 25 left. Here we go. So we can unpin that Chicago chart. Cool. So let's start with the setup, and let's also switch over to daylight charts as well. So, from Dixat, between the level 27, second level 340, we proceed towards Litany, Delta Fox 400 between 250 and 260. Then continue to Delta Fox 404 between 200 and 230. That looks good. Delta Fox 405 between 170 and 180. Delta Fox 417 between 150 and 160. And then we got borders below level 130. From there, continue towards Ostpool at flight level 100, then Delta Fox 403, and then we'll follow the downwind, like this. Alright, now let's go over to the ILS chart. We'll plan 25 left as primary runway, but we can also take 25 right if needed. So coming up here from 626 to above 4000 and then all the way to 680. And that's what we got. And then starting at 680, above 4000, maximum 220, towards 620, above 4000. And we got those two. Then 3-degree glide slope. 3-degree glide slope. And let's see about the rest. Go around straight at to 290, 285, or 5000, Magellan's later, max 220, and left back to Charlie, climb 5000, max 250. And the first was exactly what we've got. So, easy going. Right now is checked, 25 left is in here. For the descent, we'll do 0.8/300. Like that. Now, let's enter some arrival weather. QNH is 1016, temperature 11, and the wind 210 at 7. Like that, the minimum is 570 on the left runway, and we can use 1.3 for this one. Now, let's also do a little bit of calculations here. Landing performance, synchronized FMS, Frankfurt 25 left, 4000 meters, synchronized the weather, and the weight 165.5. Seems about fine to me. Just to be safe, let's calculate 166. Actually 167. What the hell?
It's a Whiskey Oscar Delta 8 Woody.
That's interesting. If I need to guess, then iniBuilds did not intercept the button 0 and gave me a rudder input for it. I know that there are a couple of problems with the interception of commands in the EFB right now. So, I think this needs 167.0, otherwise it gives you strange figures. Yeah, that looks better. So 2,116 meters needed. That is easy going, very easy going. Cool. So landing distance is checked, MSA is 4,300. Full prediction gives us 1.114 minutes extra. That's about as good as it gets really for an arrival.
Also advised there is no safety in the next sector, small turbulence to the side. This be advised, there is traffic currently at your 2 o'clock, range was 7 miles north.
Then secondary flight plan, copy active, flight insert, the Yankee approach runway 25 right in here.
Bye-bye.
The rest is unchanged, so Dixat 1 Alpha and Delta Fox 426. Now a very quick look at 25 right, Yankee approach. So we got Delta Fox 480 above 5000, max 220. So that is all the same. That. That's an arrival. There we go, that's better. But there's some bug. Look at that, it doesn't show me the approach for 25 right. That's a bug. Let's try that once more, get out and back in again. Nope. That's definitely a bug. They gotta work on that. Alright, doesn't matter. So, auto brake low, and that's our setup for the day.
Zulu Romeo, when ready, descend flight control 280, be level by no crow. Don't worry, the fellow with 280, level of 253, there is no AC in the next sector. Filter box 2.8 away.
122.8,
Oh god, what is the stream doing here?